In April of 2003, a 27-year-old outdoorsman named Aron Ralston went hiking alone in Blue John Canyon in southeastern Utah. He told no one where he was going. About an hour into the canyon, in a narrow slot between two walls of sandstone, he dislodged an 800-pound boulder. It fell, and it pinned his right hand against the canyon wall. Aron Ralston was trapped, alone, in a canyon nobody knew where he was, with 5 days of water and a multi-tool pocket knife with the blade about as sharp as a butter knife. He would be there for 127 hours. I want to tell you what he did in that canyon, not the part you've seen in the movie, the part before that, the part that made everything else possible. Welcome back to the Climb Home. I'm Devin. I'm a certified life coach, Reiki master, and day trader for the last 13 years. I'm making these videos because I believe in many ways the market and traders, in their own way, compare to Mount Everest and climbers. Sometimes the market seems insurmountable. Other times it's a challenge we gladly take on. But the market, Mount Everest, both have risk. And if you don't have the right gear, you won't get very far. And even then, there are rules that need to be adhered to and respected. Okay, 4 episodes in. If you've been climbing with me since the beginning, I want to acknowledge something. You have done real work here, not just watching, not just consuming content. You've been asking the questions, doing the practices, writing with curiosity instead of verdict, finding your vision of the life waiting. You have been on this mountain. And today we go somewhere where we haven't gone yet. Today we go into the cave. In our first 3 episodes, we established the mountain, named the guilt loop, interrupted the shame spiral, and asked the most important question: what is the life I'm actually climbing toward? All of that was preparation. Necessary, real, important preparation. But it was still, in a sense, looking at the wound from the outside, naming it, mapping it, understanding its shape. Today we go inside. Today we follow the thread all the way back to where the wound actually started. This is Base Camp 3, and it is the most important work in the entire series. In the first hours of his entrapment, after the initial shock, after the desperate attempts to move the boulder, after the reality of the situation finally settled into his body, Aron Ralston did something that most people in that situation would not think to do. He got very honest with himself. He video journaled into a small camera he'd brought with him alone in that canyon, hand-pinned against that wall, not knowing if anyone would ever find him. He recorded everything, not just the logistics, not just the survival plan, everything. The fear, the regret, the specific people he loved, and what he wished he'd said to them. The choices he'd made that had led him to that canyon on that day alone. He didn't just survive the canyon, he examined it. He followed the thread of his own decisions backwards through the day, backwards through the weeks, backwards through the patterns that he had made and that had made him the kind of person who goes into dangerous places alone and tells no one. He later said that the 127 hours were the most honest he had ever been with himself. The man who crawled out of that canyon was not the same man who walked in, not because of the physical ordeal, but because of what he found when he finally stopped running long enough to look. That boulder didn't create the transformation. The honesty did. The boulder just gave him nowhere left to hide. I want to ask you something. What is the boulder that has you pinned? Not the market, not the strategy, not the account balance, the internal one. The thing that has you in the same narrow canyon over and over. The revenge trade, the frozen entry, the overriding, the euphoric spiral that keeps happening no matter how many courses you take, no matter how many rules you write, no matter how many times you tell yourself tomorrow will be different. That's your canyon. And the question Base Camp 3 asked, the one that Base Camp 1 and 2 cannot ask on your behalf, is this: how did you get here? Not today, not last Tuesday. Originally, what was happening in the room you grew up in that made the trading wound make sense? Man, I know it's a big question. I know it might feel like a long way from a losing trade to a childhood room, but stay with me here. Because this is the thread that changes everything. Base Camp 3 work happens on 3 levels. I call them the 3 threads. And they go in order from the surface to the source. Thread 1, the behavioral thread. This is the most visible. This is what you can see from the outside. What did you actually do? Not the verdict, not I revenge traded, but the specific sequence of events. You took a loss. You felt something. You went back to the screen. You sized up. You ignored the stop. You held past the exit. You took another. The behavioral thread is the story told in actions. And it matters because it shows you the exact movement the wound took from the strategy. There's always a moment, a specific candle, a specific number, a specific feeling in the body right before the hand moved. Find that moment. That's where thread 2 begins. Thread 2, the emotional thread. This is where most trading psychology work stops. And it's genuinely valuable to get there. The emotional thread asks, what were you feeling in that moment? Not what you think you were feeling, not the sanitized version, the real one. Because here's what I've learned from working with traders. The emotion underneath the wrong trade is almost never what it appears to be. Anger usually is grief. Urgency is usually fear. Confidence is usually desperation. Calm is sometimes disassociation. The emotional thread asks you to get granular, not I was frustrated. What kind of frustration? A hot kind or the cold kind? The kind that wants to fight or the kind that wants to disappear? The kind that feels like injustice or the kind that feels like shame? Because the specific flavor of the feeling is the fingerprint, and it points directly to thread 3, the historical thread. This is the deepest one. This is where Base Camp 3 becomes something different from anything you've done before. A historical thread asks, when have you felt this before? Not in trading, before trading. Because I promise you, the specific flavor of feeling you identified in thread 2, that feeling is not new. Your nervous system didn't create it at the trading desk. It brought it there from somewhere older, from a room you grew up in, from a relationship that shaped you before you knew you were being shaped. The revenge trader, who feels the loss as abandonment, who cannot tolerate the position moving against them because it feels like being left. The freezer, who cannot click the button because being wrong feels dangerous. When did being wrong first become dangerous? The euphoric overtrader, who needs the win of feeling enough When did you first learn that you weren't enough without the performance? The overrider, whose last act of control is defying the system. When was compliance first the same as surrender? The panic seller, for whom calm is always temporary and something bad is always coming. When did you first learn that good things don't last? The historical thread doesn't ask these questions to blame anyone, not your parents, not your childhood, not the people who shaped you before you had words for what was happening. It asks them because the nervous system that runs your trading was built in those rooms. And the only way to rebuild it is to go back with compassion, with honesty, with the same warm curiosity we've been building since episode 2. Before I give you the exercise, I want to say something about the body. Because Base Camp 3 work is not primarily cognitive. It's not about understanding the wound intellectually, like in Base Camp 2. Base Camp 3 is about feeling it in the body, where it actually lives. The nervous system doesn't store memory in words, it stores in sensation, in the tightening of the chest, the shallow breath, the heat behind the eyes, the way your hand moves before the mind has caught up. When you take the wrong trade, when something takes over that isn't your strategy, that's a body memory firing, not a thought, a sensation that became an action before the prefrontal cortex could intervene, which is why, and I want you to hear this as clearly as anything I've said in this series, you cannot think your way out of a body memory. You can only feel your way through, gently, slowly, with compassion of someone who finally understands what they've been carrying. And when you do, when you can actually go back and feel the thread all the way to its source, something shifts that no amount of rule writing or journaling or strategy work could ever bring on. The body releases what the mind has been trying to manage for years. That's the healing that Camp 3 is pointing toward. This week's exercise is the most important one in the entire series. I'm going to ask you to do something that might feel uncomfortable, not because it's dangerous, but because it's real. After your next difficult trading session, the next time you take the wrong trade or freeze on the right one or blow past your stop, before you write anything in your journal, I want you to sit quietly away from the screen, somewhere where you feel safe. And I want you to work through the 3 threads. Thread 1, write the behavioral sequence that we talked about. Exactly what happened, step by step. No verdict, just events. Thread 2, find the feeling, the specific flavor of it. Where was it in your body right now as you write this? How would you describe it in as much detail as you can? Thread 3, ask this question, write whatever comes, don't edit it, don't analyze it, just let it come. Where have I felt this before? How old does this feeling make me feel? What did that younger version of me actually need in that moment? And then, whatever comes up, meet it with the same compassion you would offer a child. That's what I call reparenting, being our own good mother and good father. Give your inner child compassion because that's what they need. They were doing their best with what they had in the room they grew up with. They deserve gentleness, not your judgment. This work can bring up things that feel bigger than a trading journal is designed to hold. If it does, please reach out to a professional therapist, a trauma-informed coach, someone equipped to hold what comes up for you. This is not a weakness, this is wisdom. Aron Ralston didn't crawl out of the canyon by pretending the boulder wasn't there. He looked at it directly, and then he did what needed to be done. So I want to say something before I let you go. If you made it to the end of this episode, if you sat with the 3 threads, if you felt the historical thread land, If something surfaced that surprised you, I want you to know something. That took courage, real courage. Not the kind that climbs mountains, the kind that goes into the cave, the kind that sits with what's there instead of running from it, instead of trading through it, instead of covering it up with one more strategy, one more course, one more starting Monday. I am doing this work too, not from a finished place, from the climb, just like you. And I can tell you from inside Base Camp 3, the cave is not as dark as the trading desk made it seem. Because on the trading desk, the cave is always behind you, always chasing you, always driving the wrong trade. When you turn around and walk into it, when you actually go back and look at what's there, it's smaller than you feared, and you are larger than you knew. A thread goes all the way back. And when you follow it all the way back with honesty and compassion, it also goes all the way forward to the trader you came here to become, to the life that's waiting. I'll see you at Base Camp 4. And if you're doing this work alone, if there's no one in your life who understands what this canyon actually cost, Overtraders Anonymous meets Sunday and Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern online. It's free. It's anonymous always. And we've all been in the canyon. You don't have to go back in there alone. The link is in the description. I'll see you next week.